In Tokyo's Imperial Navy headquarters, the winter air bit sharply as Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto surveyed a map of the Pacific, its blue expanse dotted with red markers of Japanese conquests. Pearl Harbor's thunderclap on December 7, 1941, had sunk 8 American battleships, igniting a firestorm of ambition among the Imperial General Staff. Officers in starched uniforms debated loudly, their voices echoing off wood-paneled walls. Manila had fallen, Hong Kong was subdued, and Malaya's jungles resounded with Japanese victories. Yet Yamamoto, commander of the combined fleet, stood apart, his eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses betraying unease. He instructed Rear Admiral Matome Ugaki, his chief of staff, to prepare plans for the next phase by mid-February, his voice steady but heavy with foreboding. Yamamoto's mind replayed warnings he'd shared with Prime Minister Prince Konoe months earlier at the Imperial Navy Club. Japan's triumphs, he had cautioned, would stretch the empire thin, like an octopus's tentacles, only to falter against America's industrial might. The Pearl Harbor strike had crippled battleships, but missed the U.S. aircraft carriers, vital to modern warfare, which now lurked somewhere in the Pacific's vastness. Captain Kameto Kuroshima, a strategist with bold ideas, proposed invading Australia to sever Allied supply lines. Yamamoto shook his head. Too vast, too slow, he thought, his mind turning to Midway, a remote atoll where he could lure and destroy the American carrier force. Colonel Masanobu Tsuji, an army firebrand, urged relentless expansion, but Yamamoto countered that Japan could not fight forever. His years as naval attaché in Washington had taught him America's resilience. A courier arrived, announcing Wake Island's capture, tying Tokyo's debates to the front lines. As officers dispersed, Yamamoto lingered, the map's blue expanse a silent warning of the war's unforgiving tide. Far across the Pacific, aboard the USS Enterprise west of Hawaii, Lieutenant James Thatch gripped the controls of his F-4F Wildcat, the carrier's deck pitching beneath him. Pearl Harbor's scars lingered in the crew's tense silence, the harbor's oil-slicked wreckage a raw wound. Thatch, a 30-year-old Texan with a tactician's mind, had been drilling his squadron in the Thatch Weave, a maneuver to counter the Japanese Zero fighter's agility, which had shredded Allied planes in the Philippines and Malaya. The Zero climbed like a hawk and turned like a dragonfly, but Thatch bet on teamwork, weaving wildcats to trap pursuers in crossfire. On February 1st, Admiral William Halsey's task force struck Japanese bases in the Marshall Islands, a test of American resolve. Thatch's Wildcats escorted SBD Dauntless dive bombers, sinking a freighter but losing 2 planes to Zeros. In the wardroom, Thatch sketched diagrams, refining his tactic. Whispers of a daring plan, a bombing raid on Tokyo led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle, sparked defiance. The idea of B-25 bombers launching from a carrier seemed insane, but Thatch, nursing a coffee, imagined its impact on Japan's psyche. At Rabaul's airfield, Japan's South Pacific stronghold, Lieutenant Saburo Sakai inspected his Zero fighter, its aluminum skin glinting under the tropical sun. A farmer's son from Saga, Sakai had 22 kills, each a step toward honor for his family. Yet he longed for his sister's letters, her words of rice fields and home. Rabaul thrummed with planes supporting the invasion of Port Moresby, a gateway to Australia. Sakai's squadron had dominated Australian and American fighters, their Zeros untouchable. But on March 8th, as he led a raid on Lae, New Guinea, strafing Allied positions, a radio report mentioned American carrier activity near the Solomon Islands. Sakai's gut tightened. The Zero's reign might falter. He downed a P-40 Warhawk, but the pilot's parachute haunted him, a reminder of war's cost. His squadron's losses, though few, hinted at Allied adaptation. A decoded Allied message, intercepted by Rabaul's radio team, warned of carrier movements, linking Sakai's skies to the broader strategic chessboard. In Melbourne's humid map room, General Douglas MacArthur paced, his corncob pipe smoldering. The Philippines' fall in March 1942 haunted him, a personal defeat that fueled his resolve. A Coast Watcher's report from New Ireland detailed Japanese landings at Rabaul, their airfields threatening Australia's northern flank. MacArthur, his jaw set, saw opportunity. He told his Chief of Staff, Colonel Charles Willoughby, that a counterstroke was needed, eyeing a chart of the Solomon Islands. He cabled Admiral Ernest J. King, requesting carriers for a bold move against Japanese expansion. Private Robert Leckie, a 21-year-old journalist from Rutherford, New Jersey, trained with the 1st Marine Division at Royal Park. His notebook brimmed with sketches of war's chaos, tangled barbed wire, sweat-soaked comrades, a legacy to honor his World War I veteran father. "This ain't reporting, it's survival," he told Private John Sullivan, a Boston stevedores son whose rosary was a constant companion during bayonet drills. Sullivan, broad-shouldered and quiet, nodded, his faith a shield against fear. On April 18th, the Doolittle raid shook Japan. 16 B-25 bombers, launched from the Hornet under Doolittle, struck Tokyo, Nagoya, and Kobe. The damage was minimal, but the psychological blow was seismic. Aboard the Yamato, anchored at Hashirajima, Yamamoto was alerted by a frantic radio from Tokyo's air defense. He slammed a fist on his desk. "The Americans strike our heart," he told Ugaki, ordering the Midway operation accelerated. Sakai, on the Yamato for liaison, stood on the deck as the news spread, the sea's salt tang sharp in his lungs. The raid humiliated him, his pride in Japan's invincibility shaken. He thought of his sister, wondering if bombs had reached their village. A Coast Watcher's report from Bougainville, relayed to Melbourne, confirmed Japan's shock, fueling MacArthur's plans. Leckie, cleaning his M1 Garand, wrote in his notebook, "War's a story, but who'll live to tell it?" Sullivan, his rosary beads clicking, prayed silently in the humid dusk. The Coral Sea's turquoise waters churned as American carriers, Yorktown and Lexington, faced Japanese carriers, Shokaku and Zuikaku, from May 4th to 8th. Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, commanding from the Yorktown's bridge, relied on Thatch's Wildcats to protect dive bombers. On May 7th, Thatch's Weave downed 4 Zeros, but the Lexington took fatal torpedoes, sinking with 216 men. Sakai, flying from the Shokaku, marveled at American resilience, his Zero dodging flak. He scored 2 kills but took a hit, limping back to Rabaul, bloodied but alive. The battle, a tactical draw, halted Japan's Port Moresby invasion, a strategic Allied win. In Tokyo, Yamamoto grimaced at the loss of the light carrier Shoho. "They learn fast," he told Kuroshima, doubling down on Midway. A radio intercept from Rabaul reached MacArthur, fueling his Guadalcanal strategy. Sullivan, training in Wellington, heard of the Lexington's sinking, his rosary a talisman. Leckie wrote, "The sea swallows ships and men, but not vengeance." At Pearl Harbor, Admiral Chester Nimitz studied decrypted Japanese messages from Commander Joseph Rochefort's codebreakers. The MI plan targeted Midway, with a feint toward the Aleutians. Nimitz positioned the Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown to ambush Yamamoto's fleet. On June 4th, Japanese carriers Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu launched strikes, but American dive bombers sank all four by June 6th, killing 2,500 Japanese. The Yorktown was lost, but Midway was a decisive Allied victory. Aboard the Yamato, Yamamoto, stunned, ordered a retreat. Sakai, grounded at Rabaul, heard rumors of the disaster, his 26 kills hollow. A coastwatcher's report from New Georgia reached MacArthur, confirming Midway's impact. Nimitz briefed Admiral Richmond Kelly Turner on Guadalcanal, the next step in reclaiming the Pacific. Aboard the USS Macaulay in Wellington, Turner orchestrated the Guadalcanal invasion, set for August 7th. The converted passenger ship swarmed with the 1st Marine Division, under General Alexander Vandegrift, a grizzled Virginian. Turner, a logistics expert, faced chaos, misloaded supplies, and rushed training. Vandegrift confided to his aide, "We're writing the book as we go." Leckie, now a machine gunner, scribbled in his notebook, "Wars, sweat, and blood." He told Sullivan, who nodded, his rosary tangled in his gear. Their camaraderie braced them for the fight. Australian coastwatcher Paul Mason, hidden on Bougainville, radioed sightings of Japanese construction on Guadalcanal, his cave a covert outpost. His reports guided Turner, who marked Guadalcanal as the primary target. In Rabaul, Sakai prepared for Port Moresby strikes, unaware of the Allied storm brewing. Dawn broke over Guadalcanal on August 7th, rain squalls yielding to a golden sky. Carrier planes from the Enterprise, Saratoga, and Wasp bombed Japanese positions, flames leaping from oil dumps. Turner, aboard the Macaulay, watched through binoculars. Vandegrift scanned the jungle's edge. Sullivan gripped his M1 Garand in a landing craft, his rosary a silent prayer. At 9 a.m., his unit hit the beach east of Lunga Point, finding abandoned tents with scattered chopsticks. "Ghosts fled," Sullivan muttered, unease creeping in. The Japanese, mostly construction troops, had retreated inland. Vandegrift's Marines secured the airfield, naming it Henderson Field for a Midway hero. Sullivan, digging in, found a Japanese map, its intent clear: a base to threaten Australia. Leckie, cleaning his Browning, quipped, "Thought this'd be a fight." Sullivan replied, "Wait till night." On Tulagi, Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Edson's 1st Marine Raider Battalion faced Captain Hasuo Miyazaki's entrenched troops. Leckie, reassigned to Edson's unit, hauled a Browning through the jungle, thorns tearing his fatigues. A sniper's bullet whizzed past. Leckie's burst felled the enemy, but another appeared. "They're ghosts," he gasped, his hands steady. Edson's raiders lobbed grenades, but a night counterattack at 10:30 p.m. killed half a company's NCOs. Leckie, recalling his father's World War I tales, fought on, his notebook forgotten. On Gavutu and Tanambago, Sullivan faced 500 Japanese defenders. Machine guns from hillside dugouts pinned his unit. A tank commander's death by bayonet shocked him. By August 8th, all 500 defenders were dead, at a cost of 250 Marines. Leckie counted 35 Japanese bodies in a cave, their suicidal resolve chilling him. Mason's radio from Bougainville reported Tulagi's fall, alerting Rabaul. Admiral Gunichi Mikawa dispatched 5 heavy cruisers, planning a night attack. Yamamoto, on the Yamato, endorsed the move. A B-17 sighting of Mikawa's ships was dismissed, a fatal oversight. Mikawa's cruisers struck at 1:30 a.m. on August 9th, torpedoes sinking the Canberra and damaging the Chicago. Turner cursed Fletcher's carrier withdrawal. The Battle of Savo Island cost 1,077 Allied lives, but Mikawa retreated, sparing the transports. Vandegrift fortified Henderson Field. Sullivan dodged bombs from Sakai's Zero Squadron, Sakai, wounded in a dogfight, limped to Rabaul, pondering Japan's faltering dream. Mason's reports guided Allied planes. Leckie cleaned his Browning, his notebook mud-stained. Sullivan prayed, his rosary a lifeline. Yamamoto, on the Yamato, saw peace slip away. The Pacific a crucible of unending conflict.